We all know and love the Cars movie game. It was a game that defied the odds of what a movie tie-in could possibly be. But what if I told you there was actually a Cars party game on the Wii, and it's actually not bad? Yes, that's right, we are finally looking at Cars Toon, Mater's Tall Tales for the Nintendo Wii. This game also released on PC, but today we are specifically looking at the Wii version with the motion controls. Now, before we go any further, now is your chance to subscribe. If you like Cars content or movie tie-in games, then this place will be great for you. No, seriously, subscribe. Anyway, Mater's Tall Tales released in November 2010 and is obviously inspired by the tunes of the same name. Now, this game was actually developed by Papaya Studio and published by Disney Interactive. Papaya Studios were known for a small variety of tie-in games, but their most famous was definitely Toy Story Mania, a game which, for me, definitely overstayed its welcome. It was a cool concept, I guess, but it's very overhyped for literally no reason at all. Anyway, because of this, I had fairly low expectations going in. I mean, even on the box it says a Mania game, so I thought, oh, here we go, time for a few hours of just shooting stuff. Thankfully, there is more to this game than that. Now, this was actually Papaya Studios' second to last game before they created Cartoon Network Punch Time Explosion, the Cartoon Network platform fighter, and then they were made defunct in 2013.
Oh no! Anyway,
I was expecting that music to just be a little bit longer. It really caught me off guard, the silence that just followed straight away, I'm not gonna lie. So this video will now be broken up into 6 parts, one for each of these shorts that these games are based on. So first up we have Rescue Squad Mater. So each minigame begins with a how to play section that shows you the Wii Remote and what buttons or motions you should be pressing or doing. There's no actual verbal explanation as to what you're doing until the minigame actually starts and Mater gives you the context, but that's fine, it's all fairly self-explanatory. So the first minigame I played was called Race to the Scene. You are following Mater to the scene of the fire, and this is literally just a motion-controlled driving segment. Thankfully, you can actually accelerate and brake, it's not just on the rails. There are boosts you can collect and there's coins you collect as well. Just for reference, the coins you collect can be used to buy cosmetics for your playable car, which I think is very cool. But anyway, yeah, there's not really much to say about Race to the Scene. It's a fairly functional motion-controlled driving segment. It's fine. So the next minigame is actually the gameplay you saw at the beginning of the video, and that is Fire Trucks Carry. You have to balance as many tyres as you can on your head as you drive out of the burning building. You do this by tilting the Wii Remote left and right and making sure you don't topple over. But in order to move forwards and back, you also need to tilt the Wii Remote backwards and forwards. Now, this one started off easy, but as the level progressed, it does get harder and harder, to the point where I was actually struggling because I'm just not very good. But in all fairness to this, the motion controls work really well again, so it's a pretty good minigame. Okay, so next up was a mini-game called Super Squirting.
Oh, no.
Oh, these jokes just write themselves. Anyway, this is where I started to get the Toy Story Mania vibes, and I thought, oh god, I hope the rest of the game isn't like this. But thankfully it's not. You are just firing water at flames to put out the fires. There's nothing too special about this mode, but again, the motion works pretty well. I didn't have too much of a problem aiming and doing pretty well in terms of score. Much like Toy Story Mania, the whole level is very interactive. You can fire water at the helicopter, there's other things you have to be aware of as well as the fire. It's pretty cool, I have to say. Although this type of minigame is definitely very common, especially on the Wii, this is probably my favourite minigame from the Rescue Squad Mater levels. And I'm not saying the others are bad, this one is just my personal favourite. Anyway, next up we have the less hilariously titled Save the Stuff. This could genuinely be a flash game level minigame, I'm not gonna lie. Mater just drops stuff out the windows and you have to move and catch them. There's really nothing else to this minigame. It's by far the most boring of the whole level, and also some of the stuff actually falls ridiculously fast and you definitely can't catch it all. Or maybe I'm just... So to round up Rescue Squad Mater, we have the final minigame, which is Emergency Escort. Now this goes back to the motion-controlled driving, except this time you're having to escort an ambulance. Stuff is falling out the back of the ambulance, and your goal is to try and catch it, whilst also keeping up with the ambulance at the same time. This is a pretty cool minigame. It's very similar to the first one, except there's a bit more to it this time. There's a couple of cool set pieces where you're following the ambulance up some ramps over some buildings, which is pretty cool, but otherwise, again, this is just fairly standard. I found it to overstay its welcome just a little bit, and then it very abruptly ends. So overall, the minigames for Rescue Squad Mater, they're pretty good. It's a pretty good time. Bear in mind, I played through this entire experience single player, and this is a party game, so I'm sure I would have had a better time playing with a friend. However though, to be honest, they're all fairly quality minigames. Some aren't as good as others, but they're all very well made and they all function pretty well with the motion controls, so no complaints so far. So I bought my copy of this game from Vinted, and I just want to showcase the condition this game arrived in when I got it. Guys, so my car's Toon Mater's Tall Tales has arrived in the post, and it's not too bad in quality. There's some stains on the case, of course, because that was always going to happen. On the back, there's some little dirt stains as well, and then I opened the case, and there's just these ominous stains around Mater, and someone likes Mater a bit too much. So next up we had El Matador, and the first minigame in this level is Mucho Macho, which is just a memory matching game. It gets progressively harder as you go. It's the kind of thing you'd expect to see on a game like We Play. Very simple, very harmless. I did, well, okay. My memory's not great, so the score I got wasn't really high, but there we go. What I was most pleased about was that it wasn't just another copy of the previous minigames that I played, and for the most part that runs across the whole game. None of the minigames are too similar. There are a couple that are quite samey, but for the most part they are different. Okay, so next up in L Stereotype we had Pass the Cape, which involves you and some other cars, and you have to get the cape off of them and hold it for as long as you can. Whilst you're holding the cape, you have points, and then eventually the time will run out. As each level progressed in difficulty, I found the AI to just be a bit unfair by the last level, that they were just maintaining the same pace as you every time. It was just always in my screen. It's very weird, but overall, this is a pretty good minigame. I enjoyed it. Okay, so next up we had Roar of the Roses. Now, something that does happen in this game a few times is a couple of the minigames tend to overstay their welcome, and then there are some that are way too short. This is one that kind of overstays its welcome after a while, because all you are doing is driving around the same circle collecting roses. There are bulldozers which will try and stop you, but the thing is, when they hit you, there's no point deduction or a time deduction or anything. You just get stunned for like half a second and you just keep going. That's it. This one was a kind of cool idea, I guess, but in execution, it's just quite boring, to be honest with you. Still, it's not bad. Again, it functions, it's just very mid. So for the fourth minigame in this level, you actually do the running of the bulldozers. This minigame is called No Way Olay. This one involves you just waving your Wii remote around as if it were the flag, and then when the bulldozer starts charging, you press the B button. There is also some kind of timing you're supposed to get. I believe it's when the arrow is pointing in the middle of the bar, but I'm a moron and didn't figure that out until like the last round, so I didn't score too well here. But again, this game is fine, it works. This is one that's actually very short compared to the previous, so honestly I could have done with more practice on that. Our final minigame from El Matador is called Dozer Dodging. Now, I'm going to be honest, the instructions for this one weren't too clear, so it took me a second to figure out what I was actually doing. The point is, you drive around and you've got to get the balls to drive through oil. So you drop oil on the floor, wait just enough time for the ball to charge at you, and drive out the way, and they spin out and you get points. Once I had figured it out, this was definitely one of my favourites from El Matador. This is a really good minigame. Just a clearer explanation as to how it actually works would be nice, rather than just some images on a screen with no text either, might I add. It wouldn't have been hard to do that. But hey ho. You know, it only just occurred to me, as I've only just talked about 2 of the 6 levels, that this is going to be quite a long video. Okay, so our next level was Tokyo Mater, and the first minigame in that is called Materification. There we go. This is a minigame where the whole concept is you just spray paint Mater. That's it. You spray paint him red, and then for some reason he turns blue. I'm not sure if this one was thought through so well, but it functions again. The motion controls are fine. There's nothing wrong with it really, it's just a bit boring. And again, this one goes on a little bit too long. Once I've spray painted Mater once, I don't really want to do it again. Okay, so next up we had Downtown Drifters, which sees you drifting through downtown Tokyo using motion controls, but very simple motion controls. You just tilt the Wii Remote in the direction you want to drift. You hold the drifts, you get points, that's the whole game. You just have to dodge a few oncoming things, and that's it. Very simple, very fun, very good. I see drift, I am a happy man, and that's all I have to say about this minigame. It's good. Seriously, I wish I could say more, but genuinely, that's all there is to it. This is just harmless. Next up, we have the minigame that definitely overstays its welcome more than any other minigame in this whole game. And that is Lose Them Ninjas. And you know this is going to be the longest one in the whole game, because it's the only game with the soundtrack longer than 2 minutes. You are trying to run away from ninjas, and you are firing back at them as they throw ninja stars at you. This is all fine and dandy for like the first minute, but this goes on for a good few minutes of just back and forth and stupid patterns that you can barely avoid, and it's just, I don't know. It was a cool idea, but I really did not like this minigame at all. I just sat there the entire time with this expression on my face. So yeah, I'd really like to lose them ninjas because this minigame was shit. Moving on. So next up we had Construction Zone. Now this was the first time I started to feel the cracks in the motion controls start to show. This is a minigame where you're essentially acting as a skateboarder. You are going up and down ramps, performing tricks, grinding, but the issue is I just found the motion controls on this one to not be very responsive at all. I mean, I wasn't very good at it to begin with, but when you have controls that don't really respond to what you're trying to do, it just doesn't make for a very good time. I really appreciated what this was going for as someone who loves all those kind of games, but this was just not the one at all. So for the last Tokyo Mater minigame, we have Up the Tower. Now this is another longer one, but it didn't start to get very annoying very quickly, unlike the ninja level. Now you are racing up the tower, and all you have to do here is either jump over a bump or duck underneath a sign, and you do this by either raising or lowering the Wii Remote. It felt very, very easy at first, and I thought, oh god, this is going to be so boring. But once you got to the last couple of levels, it actually does require very fast reaction times, and as simple as it was, I actually really enjoyed it. Another thing I have to say about this minigame, and to be honest, all of the minigames, the soundtrack goes so unnecessarily hard. It's really good, I'm not going to lie. I've been trying to make sure that the soundtrack to each minigame matches up with it as I'm talking about it, so hopefully I've done that right. But yeah, wow, soundtrack, great, love it. Anyway, that took me to the end of Tokyo Mater, and overall, like the other two levels, it's pretty good. There is a little bit more that I wasn't so keen on. I'm sure you guys might have differing opinions, and that's completely fine. But anyway, on to the next level. So we are now halfway through these minigames, and next up we have Mater the Greater. And the first minigame in this level is High Hoops. You have to raise your hoop high enough for Mater to jump through, and to do this, it's essentially like using an air pump. You're just moving the Wii Remote up and down over and over again, and I tell you what, I'm really glad no one came into my room whilst I was playing this, because I would have looked so strange just sat there at my desk in like darkness, pumping a Wii Remote up and down in front of my body. But yeah, the motion controls work pretty well on this. It's a pretty decent minigame, and it's not over too quickly, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. Next up, we have the Whirling Bars of Dent, which is a bit of a mouthful, to be honest, but that's fine. This is essentially just jump rope. That's all there is to it. You just lift the Wii Remote up to jump, and occasionally the rope sets on fire. That's it. It's fine, I guess. There's not really much else to say about this one. It's just there. So next up we have Mater's Favourite Fan, which again is very Wii Play coded. You just have to scan around and find the particular car that the camera is showing. This gets increasingly difficult as the game goes on, and eventually it is put in the dark and you just have a spotlight to try and find that car. As I say, very reminiscent of Wii Play. But this one works completely fine. There are 10 rounds of it, which sounds like a lot, but the rounds literally take like 10 seconds, 20 seconds really, so it's not too bad. Could have done with a few less rounds maybe, but overall this is a pretty good minigame. Okay, so next up we have Big Bad Jumpin', and I think this might be my least favourite in the whole game. I could not for the life of me get this game to work properly. I wasn't sure what I was doing wrong. The essential point is you've got to race over hurdles and get to the finish line. I think it's not really explained that well. Every time I did it, I scored like no points. I could not understand what I was supposed to do. It was very short anyway, so I didn't really have the time to figure it out either. Overall, definitely like the worst minigame in this whole game. Really did not enjoy this. Absolute shit. Give it a miss. For our final minigame of Mater the Greater, we have High Dive, which is a pretty unoffensive standard minigame. You are jumping from great heights to land in some water, which I don't really know how that works when you're a car. You have to hit balloons on the way down to score points. And also on the last level of this game, Lightning McQueen is also there, and I'm pretty sure he just hits the ground and probably dies. That's all I have to really say about this one. Overall, Mater the Greater is an alright set of minigames. I just really don't like the hurdles one. Thought it was absolutely awful. Okay, so with only 2 levels remaining, next up we have Monster Truck Mater. Okay, so for our first minigame in Monster Truck Mater, we have Ice Cream Ring King. Mater's first opponent in the ring is an ice cream truck, and as they fight, ice creams are falling out the back and you just have to drive around this confined area collecting ice creams to score points. There's nothing really stopping you on this one. There's no bulldozers or anything like the Rose Collection one. You are against an opponent, but this is quite similar to that game mode, so nothing too exciting here. Functions well, doesn't overstay its welcome, just something we've already seen. But by now we are 5 of the 6 levels in, so I'm not surprised we've seen a little bit of repetition, but it's fine. Okay, so next up we have the very creatively titled Score a Goal, in which your objective is to score goals.
No way!
You are now in the ring with various different monster trucks, and a ball will get thrown in, and you just have to get that ball into the center of the ring whilst the monster truck opponents try and stop you. Occasionally a golden ball is thrown in which scores extra points, and it's a pretty decent minigame, I have to say. I had a good time with it. Our third minigame in Monster Truck Mater is called Big Time Brawlin', which is an on-the-rails shooter in a wrestling match. It's quite an interesting one. A ring will appear over your opponent and that will tell you where to shoot at. It'll be their weak points and you just have to keep firing at that to score points. This minigame does showcase some really cool animation on the enemies that you're fighting, and they all look really impressive. As much as I wanted to avoid any on-the-rails shooting or target stuff like with Toy Story Mania, I actually really liked this. This is a pretty cool minigame, I have to say. So our second to last minigame in the Monster Truck Mater level is Ring Fighter Alpha, which I'm assuming is definitely a Street Fighter reference. Of course, this minigame is basically just Street Fighter with cars. It's great, I love it. Doesn't work that well, no, but just the idea itself is so goofy that I just love it. It's great. Can you tell that I like fighting games? And I never thought that I'd see a crossover between cars and that genre, so that's just hilarious. I love it so much. That's made this like my favorite level across the whole game, just for that. The controls are as you expect. You use the D-pad to move around, you can double tap it back and forth to dash forward or backwards, and you've got like 2 attack buttons. But yeah, this is a pretty good time. Definitely would have been better with a friend because the AI was kind of goofy, but yeah, a good time. Our final minigame from Monster Truck Mater is called Beat the Monster. This absolutely enormous monster truck enters the ring and it's your job to take it down, with a little bit of help from Lightning McQueen. Now, to be honest with you, this minigame is just a bunch of quick time events. That's all there is to it. I hate quick time events in gaming. I think they're just very irritating. They were a kind of okay gimmick for like the first year they were around, and I'm just sick of them now. But I guess this game is old, so I'll give it a pass. But that's all this is. It's just a bunch of quick time events. Wave the Wii Remote, press B, do something else, press A, in time, otherwise you'll lose. That's kind of it, really. It's a shame, really, because like nearly all the other minigames in this level are really good, and it's a shame to end out on a f***ing quick time event. Now that takes us to our final level in this game, but that's not the only final thing in this video.
This is not just the last in the series. I mean, sorry, it's the show as you know it is actually ending.
Yes, that's right, this is the only home console Cars game that I had left to cover. And this video is bittersweet somewhat because this has been one hell of a ride. This does not mean the end of Cars content, but for this particular series of retrospects on Cars video games, this is it. If you've made it this far into the video, please comment down below the game's tagline, which is, "If I'm lying, I'm crying." Anyway, our final level is UFM, or Unidentified Flying Mater. So the first couple of mini-games in UFM are basically just Toy Story Mania coded shooting things, which is fine. So for our first one, we have Hit the Cans. Great. This one is very self-explanatory. You are just throwing stuff at cans and knocking them over. There are tractors to tip as well, which get you extra points. When you tip the tractors, some cans appear over their head. Flying cans, of course. There's nothing inherently wrong with this minigame. It's fine. It's just quite boring, to be honest with you. Considering this is the last level in the game, I was expecting a little bit more, but that's fine. At least the next level won't be the same, right? Right? Okay, so yeah, the next level is kind of similar. This is Hubcap Hubbub. Another shooting game, really. Tires are moving around and you have to put the hubcaps back in them. And again, that's pretty much the entire minigame. By this point, I was already bored of the tin can one last time, so this really did not help my enjoyment of this level whatsoever. Again, the game itself functions completely fine. I just don't care for it, so, I don't know, boring, functional, moving on. Okay, so finally for the third minigame, they are switching it up. This is Canyon Chaos. This game reminds me of something that looks like it should be on the Kinect. You can now fly, and you have to fly through rings to score points. Avoid obstacles, which I was not very good at, and just get to the end. That's pretty much it, but it's a nice little gameplay breakup from the last two levels, and it came just at the right time. You move around using the motion controls, and again, the motion controls for the most part work completely fine. So yeah, Canyon Chaos is pretty good. So for our second to last minigame, our unidentified flying friend gets kidnapped and you have to break into a facility and get him out. This minigame is essentially like Frogger or Crossy Road, and I'm not gonna lie, I actually really struggled on this. Getting across was completely fine. Getting back across with our friend was definitely not fine. That took way longer than it should have done, and I'm honestly quite embarrassed. Very simple controls, of course. You just use the D-pad to move around, that's it. I really wish I wasn't so shit at this, because it's pretty good. Now, this is the question you've all been waiting for. Does this game end on a high note with its final minigame? This is called Desert Dash, and genuinely, I have to say, not really. You are escaping away from the facility you've just broken your friend out of, but it's just another motion-controlled driving segment like the very first level in the game. The set pieces and the idea of it itself is actually pretty cool, I have to say, but it's just a shame that it's just the same thing we started with, but just in a different place. Not bad at all, just very underwhelming for the overall game. And that takes us to the end of all the minigames of Mater's Tall Tales. Overall, I've got to say, I actually really like this game. It's pretty good fun, and definitely if I played it with more people than just myself, it would definitely be a better time. Nearly all the minigames are pretty decent at least, and they all work very well, excluding like one or two, which for a Wii minigame collection is pretty good going. It translates all the shorts very well into minigames, and I like that they still keep the story going on as you're playing them. Other than that, I have to mention that there is customization in this game. As you saw, I was the same red car throughout, but then I'd unlocked a bunch of stuff at the end, so I customized my car to look like this. And that pretty much took me to the end of my time with Cars, Toon, Mater's Tall Tales, and with the Cars home console games as a whole. What did you guys think of this game? Did you have this growing up? Do you like the minigames? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And all I really have left to say is, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and tap the bell for notifications. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.